Joining us, we have Jonathan Lawless, Jake Eckholm, Ashon Nesbitt, and Janey and Dana Vanderford. Jonathan with Bilt Rewards, Jake with the Director of Development in Muskegon, and then Ashton, the CEO of the Florida Housing Commission, and then Janey, the Executive Director of the California Policy, and then Dana as the American Director of Homelessness Prevention, or Associate Director of Homelessness Prevention. Sorry, just trying to read from the side. So we'll turn it over to Jonathan. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much. And for those of you lingering in the hallway or having side conversations, I recommend that you pay attention to this panel because it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a little spicy. I don't know if you guys remember that show, The Real World. Like, we're going to see what happens when people stop being polite and talk for real. And so we're going to talk about policy. I'm super excited to introduce these amazing panelists. Let me start by introducing myself, Jonathan Lawless. I'm with a company called Bilt Rewards, really the first and only of its kind reward program that centers on the home and the neighborhood. So now we have over 5 million renters on the platform. They're earning benefits from paying rent. They're earning benefits in their neighborhood, and those benefits are helping them build their credit and ultimately become homeowners. So I have firsthand experience talking with our members every day of how hard it is for them to become homeowners. And so I'm really excited at all the progress and great ideas that are coming out of Ivory and other places about really kind of fixing this problem. So that's me. Let me turn it over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves and just say a word or two about your company.
Thank you. My name is Jake Eckholm. I'm the Director of Development Services for the City of Muskegon. So we're structured a little differently. We have a city manager form of government. My division includes the economic development, planning and zoning, inspections, and community development departments. So any of the various departments that other panelists and speakers have had issues with from a code compliance standpoint, that's us. And so happy to be here. But one of the things that we're doing here today is we were a Rust Belt community that had seen a lot of residential disinvestment and needed to put back homes on about 1,000 vacant lots. And the challenge was we really couldn't generate a private sector market to build those homes because we had, traditional 30 to 50 foot lots. That really wasn't the type of housing being built in our region of West Michigan. And so we decided to do that ourselves and leveraged tax increment financing to build what we think is the most affordable stick-built, site-built construction in the country. So that's what we're here for.
So 2 quick things. I'm relabeling the Rust Belt to the Lakes Belt. So you guys heard it here, okay? It's the Lakes Belt, no more Rust Belt. And then you also have to do the MIT thing that everybody from Michigan does and point out where Muskegon is, because probably not a lot of you know where Muskegon is.
I have done this no fewer than 6 times today. So this is a stereotype for us Michiganders. So everybody, for the most part, knows Detroit is sort of located right there. Muskegon is on Lake Michigan. It's the largest community in Michigan on Lake Michigan, and it is over here.
There you go. So now you guys know. All right, let's move on to Ashon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashon Nesbitt. I'm the CEO of the Florida Housing Coalition. And first, it's good to be in Utah, experiencing a little bit of fall. We usually don't get that until December, and you guys are in winter, but it's nice to experience that today. We are a statewide organization. We've been around for 43 years now. And just a little bit of history that kind of led us to this point. So back in 1992, my predecessor, her name is Jamie Ross, she really brought together this diverse coalition of folks, folks that would not otherwise probably sit in the same room together or definitely not agree, but they all came together around one issue, is that was the need for housing affordability in the state of Florida. We needed a way to fund it, and we needed it to get to every part of the state. And she had this wonderful idea. We're going to have this trust fund. It's going to be funded by doc stamps, and every county in the state is going to get a piece of that. And so the retail federation, the hoteliers, the apartment association, the realtors, of course, all those folks, and all the industry folks, all the business folks, they came together and they supported this one thing, and it's been incredibly successful. So we have the coalition building on the front end, but then where we came in on the back end, our organization has really been that implementation partner, working. We heard that earlier today, how that was so important. We had rural counties who would not otherwise have this, and now they have this money and they don't have the staff. And so, we've really been the organization has really supported them and it's been hugely successful. Hundreds of millions of dollars get out the door every year because of the work that we do coming alongside and being that trusted advisor. And so what that has also done is put us in a position to be able to inform the legislature and others as to what's really working on the ground from real experience from the folks that we deal with every day. And so we've been kind of telling these stories for many, many years. And we got to the Live Local Act, which some of you have heard about, which is a huge statewide legislation. It's the first big update to our state housing strategy. And one of the centerpieces of that was, we call it a mandate or a land use tool. Planners don't like when we use the term preemption. But it was really is a tool in the toolbox for local governments to be able to get housing produced much quicker. It got to the issue of predictability. So if you meet all of those certain requirements, you get administrative review, which was huge. But you also get the use, you got the height, the density, all of the things that are needed to make things work. And something that we really like as being proponents of permanent affordability. There are some tax exemptions that really incentivize the long-term and even the permanent affordability, taking that land out of the speculative market. So we got a lot of policy wins at once, and also being that kind of trusted advisor, being able to work with communities around the state and say, how do we take this and make it have some real results on the ground? So we're really excited and happy to be honored today.
Thank you, Sean. And I really look forward to hearing more about how you managed to get all that stuff done. Really incredible. Our next two panelists, Janey and Dana, take their partnership so seriously that they dress alike every day. Joking.
It's embarrassingly true.
It's a Dodgers thing. That's the Go Dodgers.
We'll pretend that's the case.
I'm not sure which one of you wants to go first. But you're
I'm happy to go
Fire away,
first.
yeah.
I'm Janey Rountree. I'm the executive director of the California Policy Lab at UCLA. So I flew here from Los Angeles, but I grew up in Cleveland. So I'm processing the Lake Belt name. I don't know. Now that I know we're on the real world, I feel like my mom's gonna pop out from the back and be like, "It's not the Lake Belt, it's the Rust Belt." Anyway, sorry. The California Policy Lab at UCLA is an academic research center. We have two sites at UCLA and UC Berkeley. We're about 8 years old, and our mission is to do research for government impact. We specialize in close working partnerships with public agencies in California to try to leverage all the insights of academia in ways that really matter to public agencies trying to solve complex problems. And a lot of what we do is quantitative. So we specialize also in linking together large government data sets that usually are not linked together, so that when you put them together, you get much better insights around what's happening to families and individuals in California. We used a lot of that linked data to build a model that predicts who is at highest risk of homelessness in LA County. It's a form of AI, it's not generative AI. And we use insights from public mental health, emergency department visits, child welfare, our public safety net programs, a lot of data that we link together, and we use all of that to generate a list of individuals at highest risk of future homelessness. And we send that list to Dana, who works for LA County, and she re-identifies the list and reaches out to these people to try to reach them at a moment of crisis that they're having to prevent them from falling into homelessness. So I'll turn it over to Dana to talk about her work.
Thanks, twin. My name is Dana Vanderford. I am the Associate Director of Homelessness Prevention. I run our Homelessness Prevention Unit, which is situated in the county's Department of Health Services. So as Janey mentioned, we are receiving lists of high-risk clients, folks who might be losing their housing in the next 12 months. We proactively outreach to those folks. So we're calling them 3 times, we're emailing them. Sometimes we're showing up at their address. They're skeptical of us because we're reaching out of the blue. We know that they need some assistance at this time and that they're unlikely to otherwise connect to prevention programming, but they may not know about their own level of risk. So we connect with those folks, enroll them in our program, work with them for 4 to 6 months. So it's a pretty short-term intervention. And the intervention has sort of 3 components: flexible financial assistance. So we're helping folks pay their rent, their rental arrears, but it's maximally flexible. So we're also helping people fix their cars, buy furniture for their home, send their kiddos to summer camp if it would help them stay connected to employment. Really client-driven. We also make linkages to supportive services, so getting our clients connected to a doctor, a mental health provider, an employment resource, benefits, whatever will help our clients maintain their stability beyond their time with our program. And then the last piece is really responsive case management. I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. We work with 700 clients every year. 90% of our clients retain their permanent housing at time of program exit. So we really, in a very short matter of months, help our folks stabilize in their own independent housing. And with our partnership with CPL, we'll be evaluating this work long term. So really want to know, do our clients still maintain their housing 18 months after they leave our program? Do their other health indicators benefit from an interaction with our program? So I'll stop there.
Oh, amazing. Thank you guys so much for that introduction. I'm going to ask one big question of the panel before kind of digging into each of your guys' models in a little more detail. There's been a lot of conversation so far today, earlier this morning, for a lot of my life, about how it is that you can get things done at the state and local level. And so my last name is Lawless, so I usually revert to bribery or broken limbs or things like that, right? But those aren't the right ways to go about it. But this is where it's going to get spicy. It's hard. And I'm sure it's really difficult to bring coalitions together. And so we have a lot of people in the audience that are dialing in, that are in different cities and places. And so maybe just give them a perspective of like how you were able to get what you were able to get done there, and what they might take away from that. Like, where should they start? How should they start with some of the solutions they're focused on? Yeah, start with you, Jake. Yeah.
You were making eye contact, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna take
that
as
was
go.
my indication.
Yeah, so my background is in city management, and since the beginning, I've always had this rule that we're going to try to find ways to say yes rather than ways to say no. And I think the biggest thing we hear from developers, I've heard it today from some other folks, is that the barriers exist in local and state government, and that is the biggest barrier to progress on the housing front. So we approached it as, okay, well, now we're the developer. Where are our own rules going to get in the way of us being successful? And that really helped us identify the key places to focus. Some of that included advocacy at the state level. So specifically, and we can get more into it, our TIF comes from our Brownfield Act in Michigan. That's the act that we chose to use. And there was a small provision that was sort of nebulous, but it basically sounded like it allowed public entities to take more eligible activity reimbursement than private developers. And when we asked the state about it, the state was like, "Oh, we don't really know what that means." And it's a state law, so that's a concern. But so we took that to mean, we got our legal opinion, and we said, "Okay, this is how we're going to do it." And so again, finding ways to say yes to innovative programming is super important. And I think more and more, as you see the turnover in local government and state government leadership, I'm finding more and more people willing to have those conversations and engage in those innovative approaches to complex problems. But again, just creating those working relationships with those public sector partners is super important.
It's amazing. I like the idea of putting the city in the position of the developer so they can see firsthand what the restrictions are. It's a really fascinating way to kind of turn the tables a little bit and get those learnings and these unique little laws in the state law is that's very cool. Ashon, the amount of stakeholders you've had to deal with is really impressive. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, so I've only been doing this for 8 years, but there are a lot of people that came before me that did that. When our trust fund was first established, I think what was a weakness turned out to be a strength in terms of the ability to continue to get things done. We never thought that, those funds would ever get swept away into other things. And so it was not actually written into the statute that that money was protected. Because of that, that group that assembled in 1992 continued to stay together, and they met together every year, and they all came together to advocate for those funds. Because of that, we had that audience every year where we could talk about other policy things that were important. And so over time, being able to spread that message, and we're just the information provider. We don't have a lobbyist. These are most people that have much more lobbying power that have the ear that can really make those, have that influence. And so we really kept that together and continue to facilitate that education piece. And so it really took a long time. It's not, it takes a lot of patience in many cases to get some of these things done. It feels like it's all happening at once, but this was really the 20, 30 years of educating and continuously educating folks to understand, okay, we've got this piece together, let's get the other pieces in place. And so it finally came together with the right leadership at the right time.
Amazing.
So for our contribution to our joint project, I think one of the things that's unique is that we built this data infrastructure that I mentioned. It's really hard to do. I think a lot of people who want to solve problems just don't feel like they have access to the data that they need to really understand it. And I have worked on data linkages in LA, but also in Chicago and the city of New York. And the success stories all have a common theme, which is that all of the people involved are trying to solve a really urgent, compelling policy problem. And that is the driving or motivation behind doing a lot of really difficult legal and regulatory work. So in LA, it was solving homelessness. It felt very urgent to the kinds of public officials who could get their lawyers in a room and say, work out these data sharing agreements. When I was in Chicago, the motivating problem was reducing violence on the south and west side of Chicago. And when I was in New York, interestingly, there was a moment around Hurricane Sandy, if you recall that allowed us to link a huge amount of administrative data in New York. Once you walk through that open door in that critical moment, you can use that linked data for all kinds of different questions. That data set we built in New York back then is still being used today for a wide variety of issues. And I think it's understanding, it's something that Jake said too, you have to be solving the same problem together. You can't be in an adversarial role with your public agency partners. You have to see what you can solve together.
I think the way I would answer this question is by sort of like rephrasing it, like how did we get our public funders and elected officials comfortable with risk? And there's risk involved in some components of our program. We are allowing clients to really choose what they spend their funds on. We're not restrictive there. I think we bought somebody a pug once. I don't think I've ever told Janey that. So, how do you get a group of elected officials comfortable with the maximal flexibility that we really believe in as a component of our program? And I think the way we've done that is by ensuring that we're targeting our scarce resources at the most vulnerable folks. So because we know, because of the predictive model, that we are working with the people who have the highest likelihood of experiencing homelessness in LA County, we kind of get a little bit of an openness there. Because we're targeting so effectively, we've opened up some flexibility in other components of our program. It was just one pug, and we're not doing that all the time, but.
I want to hear more about the pug story. Maybe if I have not enough questions, we'll come back to the pug. So, okay, so now I'm going to pick on you individually, and just because, Janey, you're from Cleveland, where I'm from, and you're in analytics, which is what I spent a lot of my career on, and you do AI stuff, which I love. I'm going to start with you. I'm really interested in what you just said about collecting data, particularly for this idea of using data to predict the likelihood of homelessness. And as I was preparing for this panel, I asked ChatGPT, hey, how likely are you to be able to predict someone who might become homeless? It said, that's a fascinating and delicate question. So anyway, can you tell us why it's fascinating and delicate, and sort of what are the nuts and bolts of predicting somebody, his likelihood of becoming homeless?
So the data that we use in LA, as I mentioned, is pulling from all of these systems, and we use that data because it was available to us. But I really want, for scaling and to inspire all of you, I don't think you have to have all of that data to predict homelessness. You really need a data set that says something about risk, and you need a data set that shows you who is experiencing homelessness in your community, and you have to connect them together. I think you could do this if you have a data set on people who are behind in paying their utility bills connected to homelessness data. You could do this with eviction data potentially. So really thinking about, in your local context, how do I build a minimum viability data set that I can link to my homelessness data? I think sometimes when people read what we've done, it feels a little overwhelming to think about negotiating data access from all of these different entities. I think the other thing, if you're using a slimmed down data set, that's important to understand is that your data is going to make a more accurate prediction of who is at risk of homelessness. It's not necessarily going to explain to you why they are at risk of homelessness, and you really need a partner who is a service provider who is going to reach out to these people and figure out what is it that they need. And so the data is not, the technology is a utility, to make the hard work of helping people more efficient. It is not a replacement for that. And so it doesn't surprise me that ChatGPT can't answer this question, but I like that you tried. But yeah.
Look, and can you say a little bit more about the success you've seen in the models that you've built of like, how accurate do you think you are in sort of at least narrowing it down to the people you should focus on?
So to put the math problem in perspective, in LA, we have, I think, between 4 and 5 million individuals living below the poverty line who are receiving some type of public assistance. On any given year, about 112,000 of them will be homeless. So this is the size of our population of people experiencing homelessness is very big, but it's statistically very rare. It's very hard to know who in that 4 or 5 million people are going to end up on the street or in a shelter. So the predictive model, if we generate a list of roughly 10,000 individuals, about a third of them will become homeless. So that's a huge improvement on random guessing. The other thing that you think about is if you serve all of those people, you might serve some people who are not actually going to experience homelessness, but they're extremely vulnerable, right? So you're enrolling a lot of people in this program who are at sort of the highest need for these scarce resources. So it's a big improvement, but you can't predict something like that with 100% accuracy, just given the statistical rarity of the outcome.
Can I add one thing on there? As I mentioned, we're doing an RCT on our work, and we'll have really solid results in early 2027. But we worked with CPL to gather some early outcomes for HPU clients. We don't have our treatment and control to compare yet, but we looked at outcomes for clients who did enroll in HPU and those who did not. So a relatively comparable group of folks. We saw a 71% reduction in appearances in the homeless services system for clients who did enroll in the program, which is a lot more effective than like maybe I ever imagined it would be. It also means that there's a large number of people who are prospective HPU clients who are appearing in the homeless services system 18 months down the road. So while that sort of breaks our heart that folks are experiencing that adverse outcome and we didn't get to them, it means that we're targeting our resources at the right folks.
I'm going to continue going with you. I was going to split you guys up initially, but now I feel bad about doing that. Talk a little bit about outside of PUGs. Like, first of all, I think it's pretty clear in most fields that if you can do preventative care, it's so much better than trying to deal with the issue after it happens. And so, what type of preventative care do you use? What are the ones that have been most successful? Give me a sense of like how you staff it. Like, how does that really work?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about staffing. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And maybe just to back up a little bit, we use this relatively sophisticated technology to find our clients, this predictive analytics. It's very targeted, but everything that happens from the point of identification on is so extremely human. And so we've really built our intervention with a lot of attention to client decision-making, a lot of client autonomy. We're really intentional about taking care of our team. I think the quality of case management that folks receive really matters and makes a difference for client outcomes. So we keep our caseloads low. Every one of my team members is working with, a maximum of 15 clients at any given time. Other intensive case management services providers are working with 25. DPSS caseworkers have 100 clients on their caseload. So I think that really makes a difference and is one of the secret ingredients to our success.
Can I just add to, on the service model, one of the things that's really unique about a predictive model is that everyone is their client. There's no question whether they are the client or not. They are all going to get roughly $4,000 to $6,000 in cash assistance. One of the reasons why that's so important is that it gives you a lot of flexibility around how to spend that money. In a typical prevention program, people are raising their hand saying, hey, I think I need this public assistance. And that program has to do a lot of screening to avoid fraud. So they have to do a lot of asking you questions and making sure you are who you are and that you have the issues that you have. And typically they're only going to give the money to a landlord, for example. And you take that risk away when you are proactive. And so it allows a government funded program to be way more responsive and flexible because there isn't this risk that you're giving money to someone who isn't who they say they are.
Yeah, it's truly a unique partnership. And I hope a lot of folks that are out there sort of think about how they can leverage things like that and pull on expertise like you guys have done. in this particular case. I'm going to do what so many Americans do and fly over the Midwest and go to Florida from California. Ashon, let's talk a little bit about what you guys are doing. We saw your video earlier, and just there seems to be so many different components to what you guys are doing, from permitting to zoning to all these different things. But give us, again, the nuts and bolts of what you guys are doing and what you guys are seeing so far with it.
Yeah, so that act was pretty big, had a lot of parts to it. The part that gets the most attention is the land use preemption. So far, we've seen just over 43,000 units that have been proposed or through permitting at this point, and that's just in a year and a half of this law being in effect. And it did go in effect immediately, so it impacted communities immediately. There wasn't kind of this lead up to it. So as soon as it passed, it was the law of the land. So we're really encouraged by that. That has been such a buying into it from the development community. And also one of the things that came up early in some discussions, looking at kind of what have been the pushbacks against it. This really, number one, it brought the private sector to the table, but we also know that there's a need for housing affordability across a wider spectrum of income levels. And so one of the pushbacks that we've seen is this is really not reaching, the 80% or below that we really want to reach. What we have seen in reality, based upon what's actually been proposed, is that a little bit more than half of the affordable units that are coming online through this land use mandate are actually going to be for 80% or below. So it is actually a way to touch that area without the heavy public subsidy. And so, now the subsidy can come in and get to that deeper level of affordability that it maybe couldn't reach before. So, that we are kind of seeing that early on. Some of the lessons that we have learned, though, outside of the predictability, the property tax exemption that is part of this has been like the biggest attractor to the private sector, which kind of creates some tension with local governments who rely a lot on that. So that's something we're going to be kind of using our funding for, is to kind of look at that. What's the comparison? Because I think it's easy for some folks to say we can just write a check for some gap financing, but you can get much more production perhaps out of a tax exemption. And then what does that then do to your larger economy? Is that money now coming back in because people are saving money on their rent, things like that? So trying to understand all those pieces so we can see, further support the policy. But it's been really, I guess, encouraging to see so much interest and activity from the private sector and bringing in some new allies that we didn't have before on the housing affordability discussion.
It's fantastic. And so the land use preemption allows commercial zones to be turned into residential zones effectively. And so you can take sort of unused commercial areas and now actually start building homes on it. Of course, you should be able to do that. How did that even get done? Like, I mean, it's like a YIMBY's dream. Like, can you talk about, like, in your experience, like, what led to that? What was the momentum that led to that ultimately?
When people start being real. So, I mean, in some ways it's like, how did this happen? But I do know that our organization, I personally did a study on, how to do adaptive reuse on commercial properties in 2018, which got the attention of Senator Pasadoma, who was the Senate president, who was a big, leading the charge in getting this together. So it was kind of a little bit of luck that the right person heard a factual story or just some information and said, hey, this is something we need to run with. And it really stuck with her. And, that's how it kind of happened. So a little bit of just, preparation meets timing, and it just kind of worked out that way.
That's awesome. I was at Fannie Mae when you guys were converting malls in, I think, St. Petersburg, is that right?
Yes.
Back then? Yeah, incredible. Yeah. So just great work. All right, let's get to flyover country. First of all, how cool was it that one of the Hack a House people was talking about TIFs? I mean, first of all, what an amazing set of presentations, but I was like, oh, now we don't have to spend a bunch of time telling people what it is. But anyway, despite that, it's probably worth spending a little bit of time just talking about how your program works exactly and sort of the conditions that exist in Michigan to allow that to be so successful.
Sure. Two things. Michigan is not flyover country. We are north of flyover country. And the other thing was I actually had a chance to speak with one of those students from the University of Utah during the break, and she reminded me that she had been an intern with Ivory Innovations during my first or second virtual call. And she's like, I learned what TIF was and got kind of the general idea. She's here right now, so thank you for that. And congratulations on your program. So yeah, long story short, we owned approximately 500 vacant lots. There's approximately 1,000 citywide. We had site control of about 500 of them, another 40 with the land bank. And we decided to put all of those into in Michigan, what's called a brownfield work plan. And so we said, okay, here's the plan. We're going to build housing. Us as the city are going to act as the developer and broker of homes, for sale product homes to start. And we plan to take targeted losses. So I'm going to build a house that cost me $200,000 to build, and I'm going to sell it for $175,000 as an easy math example. And then as that new owner pays their property taxes, which we all appreciate them doing at City Hall, instead of distributing all that tax to the various taxing jurisdictions like the county, special millages, colleges, we would keep the majority of that until we make ourselves whole and reimburse ourselves that $25,000 plus 5% per the statute. And then our original plan was we're going to do this all ourselves and rinse repeat if we have to. But we had a really strong indication that if we built a market, a new construction market in our community that really didn't exist in our traditional infill neighborhoods, that we could attract further investment. And that's exactly what has happened. So between 2018 and 2023, the city's infill housing TIF accounted for 60% of all new construction housing in the city. The other 40% were predominantly waterfront, high-end condo development. And so there really would not be an attainable price point new construction housing market in our community had we not built it ourselves. And then the second phase of the program was, okay, all these lots are in our brownfield plan, regardless of whether or not we are the ones building on them. Let's see if we can attract some of these builders to buy our lots and put their houses on them, because housing is a spectrum. It was mentioned earlier. We call it housing churn in-house. So, as I build one of my starter homes, somebody leaves an apartment, and then somebody from the Public Housing Commission who's voucher eligible can use their voucher on that apartment, so on and so forth, all the way up the chain. And so let's get some builders to push the market. Build whatever you can. Whatever you can sell it for, we're cool with it. You sell it. And so we have people that are, selling at the high end of our city's market in our neighborhoods, but that lot is still in our brownfield plan. So I have no costs into that unit, but now that owner pays their taxes, it still subsidizes my brownfield. And so what we've managed to do is effectively subsidize affordable owner-occupied housing with market rate owner-occupied housing.
It's amazing. I was talking to Jake earlier, and I was looking for a sign. This clock perpetually says it's 6 o'clock, so I thought, I can go on forever. But he gets paraded around constantly to different cities to sort of explain what they're doing. And at the end of the day, it's, you got a vacant lot earning no tax revenue. I mean, of course, you should just think about what you can do to subsidize to put something that will generate tax revenue. So really, really love what you're doing. So I guess the last question, and we probably won't have time to talk about dog breeds and homeless prevention, so we'll maybe save that for another day. But where do you guys go from here? Obviously funding changes, the number of lots you have available for the program changes, things change, but also advancements in what you've learned change. So I'd be really curious to hear what's next for each of your programs. We'll start with you, Jake.
Sure. So I'm very happy to announce that as of my trip here, we just permitted our 400th infill lot on those original roughly 485 lots. So that's great. So we're really down to the wire. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have approximately 50 left in that original plan. We have programmed all of our land bank lots. We have nothing in the land bank at the county level. So what we've done with the tax increment revenue that's reimbursing us from various investments is we've started a housing fund in our city's operating budget. And so it's considered a capital fund, which gives us a lot more options on what to do with that money than tax money. which is great. So our goal is to move into a couple different things: property acquisition mode, buying the remaining 500 vacant lots in all of our 15 neighborhoods, but also focusing on things like expanding our existing down payment assistance program to be less restrictive, like our HUD dollars are. Working on permit ready plans so that theoretically someone can walk into my division offices and have same day permitting. Put your deposit on your lot, pick your site plan, pay $100 fee to us instead of $2,000 to an architect, walk across the hall to our other offices, get your provisional building permit, and then by closing, you're ready to break ground that day. And so we think that that is a good use of these resources that we're taking in from this brownfield.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we have a lot of tools in the toolbox at the state level now. In addition to Live Local Act, this year we got the Yes in God's Backyard legislation passed. We had some discretionary tools that were already there. So kind of this power we've built at the state level, we want to take that down to the local level and do some coalition building to get some more take up on the tools that folks have to see some results, more results at the local level. So that's what's next for us.
Awesome.
Los Angeles just passed Measure A, which is generating revenue for prevention and many other things. So one of the things the California Policy Lab is doing is helping a new public agency design a prevention ecosystem that would include the predictive modeling, but also other types of prevention, including eviction defense. So that's a bright spot. The challenge right now in LA is that we're about to lose, I don't know, $300 to $400 million of funding in our homeless services sector. A lot of families are going to lose access to food benefits, Medicaid. We're losing our subsidies. We're losing our federal dollars. And we're just going to see a lot of people entering the front door of the system. So it's an odd position to be hopeful about this one new funding revenue source, but also really thinking about what's going to happen in our communities the next couple, foreseeable future.
Janey kind of took mine, not surprising. But I think the only thing I'd add on is the hard work in that context that we have to do is convince folks that it's more important than ever to invest in homelessness prevention, which tends to be less visible work than rehousing folks. You can't see it because you're stopping it before it starts. And so I think in this environment of scarcity and fear and uncertainty, and we don't know what's going to happen, it's kind of a tough sell to make sure that investment continues in homelessness prevention when it feels like everything is on fire. We have to remind folks that acting earlier, being proactive is more important than it's ever been.
Well, heartfelt thanks to all of you for what you guys do in your community, for letting us learn from what you guys are doing in your community, and most of all for being here on the panel with us. So join me in thanking our panelists for today.